All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about something that feels, well, it feels completely backward at first. It's all about how our brains, which are usually pretty good at math, can totally mislead us when it comes to saving money for the long haul.
So, let's kick things off with what seems like a really simple question. I'm sure it's one that many of you have probably thought about if you're aiming for some big financial goals. Okay, I want you to actually pause and think about this. You've been working, you've been saving like crazy, and you finally did it. You hit that first massive milestone, $100,000. In your big journey to $1,000,000, how much progress have you really made? Now, your gut reaction, your logical brain probably just screams 10%, right? I mean, 100,000 is 10% of a million. The math is simple, it's clean, it makes perfect sense. But what if I told you that answer is completely and wonderfully wrong? This is where it all gets so cool. Because once you factor in the single most powerful force in all of finance, the whole equation changes and the answer is not what you'd expect.
So look at this. It's like a showdown between two different ways of thinking. On the left, you've got our everyday linear logic. 100K is 10% of a million. Simple. But on the right, you have the reality of compounding logic. And that logic says your first $100,000 is actually a full third of the journey.
Yeah, 33.3%. Just let that sink in for a minute. By saving that first 100 grand, you've actually completed 1/3 of the total effort it takes to become a millionaire. Now, this isn't some kind of financial wizardry. It's just math. Let's break down how on earth that's possible. To really get our heads around that 33% figure, we need to pop the hood and look at the engine that's driving this whole thing. And that engine is compound growth. This is the absolute key. You know, the easiest way to think about compound interest is that classic snowball analogy. It starts out small at the top of a hill, but as it rolls, it picks up more snow, getting bigger, and the bigger it gets, the faster it picks up even more snow. Your money does the exact same thing. At first, you're doing all the pushing, but after a while, the earnings from your money start generating their own earnings, and that's when the real magic begins. So what does this actually look like in real life? Well, based on historical market data, a pretty incredible pattern emerges. It takes, on average, about 12 years of consistent saving and investing to hit your first $100,000. 12 years! But then, to get the next $900,000, it doesn't take another 100 years. It only takes about 18 more. You see that? The acceleration is insane. That first chunk of money takes what feels like an eternity. It's the longest, hardest part. But the next $900,000 comes flying in so much faster. The growth isn't a straight line. It's a curve that just gets steeper and steeper. And that is the most crucial takeaway here. We have to stop thinking about that first $100,000 as just a number. It's so much more than that. It's a fundamental change in your financial reality. It's the tipping point. I mean, just look at this chart. It puts everything into perspective. 12 long years to get that first 100,000. But after that, you're potentially stacking up another 100 grand every 2 years. The amount of effort, the time, the grind to get from zero to that first milestone is just massive compared to every single step that comes after. Time is the real currency you're spending. That's exactly why we call it the compounding threshold. Think of it like reaching critical mass. It's the point where your money is finally a big enough army that it can start recruiting new soldiers all by itself, without you having to do all the work. And that just changes the whole game. Seriously, understanding this one idea should completely reframe how you look at your financial goals. It's not about slowly inching your way along some long track. It's about an all-out sprint to get to the real starting line.
So, what's the big takeaway here? First, you've got to train your brain to think exponentially, not in a straight line. Second, and this is so important, you have to embrace the fact that the grind to your first 100K is the hardest and the most vital part of the whole journey. It's the price of admission. Crossing that line is what unleashes the real power. It's not 10% of the way there, it is the launch pad. All that difficult, slow slogging at the beginning, when it feels like you're barely making a dent, that's actually you, doing a third of the heavy lifting. You're building the foundation that's strong enough for compounding to take over. So the only question left is this. You know where the real starting line is. When does your race begin?